because obviously, like with what's gone on the past few years and just the way the world is, it's like there's something that needs to change. Like we need to do this differently. We need to, and to me, how we're living in the spaces that we're living play a huge role in that, because a lot of people don't think about it, but it's like the space that you're in has a huge effect on your state of consciousness. It's like the height of the ceilings, like this has a high ceiling, so it gives a certain feel to it versus if it was 2 or 3 feet lower, it's like we'd feel more confined. And it's not just that it gives a different feeling, it's like the energy is different. There's more room, so the energy is allowed to flow in a different way. And so it's like when you can create communities and cities that allow the energy to flow in a different way versus how it has been, which is in a lot of cities it's like this dense, it's almost like a cloud, it's like like a tornado of energy or a hurricane of energy, because there's just all this stuff happening and swirling, and there hasn't been a lot of thought in a lot of cases put into what is a person's experience going to be like in this setting. And people will think of that within their own building, but it hasn't been thought of on a wider level where it's like, we didn't think of the whole town. We didn't think of this like 10 square miles, like what it's going to be like and how everything's interacting.
That's honestly a genius concept.
Yeah. Have you read the book Celestine Prophecy?
I haven't read it, but I'm familiar with it.
Okay, so at the end of that book, not to spoil it for you, but they speak of a concept of a future of what the world will look like. And they describe a world where people's income is automated from these mega cities and they don't necessarily go into work, and everyone lives on the outskirts of town in like these nature temples, like these collectives that you're literally describing right now. And they literally like they talk about that, and they're like, maybe we're 100 years out, 500 years out from that being the way that humanity lives, but that is the way that humanity is supposed to be. That's the way that we're actually designed to live, is in these types of communities. So I hear that and I'm drawing the bridge like right now as you're speaking, like, oh, that's the beginning of that.
Well, it also feels more tribal too. Like if you have like that kind of community being closer to nature and within a group of people, instead of like you live in an apartment building and no one in this building, maybe 2 other people.
Exactly. And so like beyond just the real estate aspect of it, there is the community aspect and that people will have to adjust to. So that's a huge part of it too. It's like you can build the most physically conducive community, but that doesn't automatically like make people able to interact in a community way. And that's the importance of the temple. It's like there will be events and there will be workshops and there will be like a system for introducing people to a new way of living and experiencing and interacting with each other beyond just how they're living. And the community is actually going to be set up in that way, or it's like at least how I'm envisioning it, and they're planning it. It's like beyond the like denser housing, you get out and it's clusters of homes, so like say 8 to 10 homes, and so everyone has their own home and they have their own yard, but there's also a shared community space in the middle, and then you can customize that space based on whoever the families are. So it's like, let's say we grabbed 20 of our friends and we're like, hey, we're gonna together buy these 10 homes, and in the middle, like by then we all have kids or something, so it's like in the middle we want a playground, we want a swimming pool, we want a community garden. Then that's your community space to customize as you want. And that's your little community, but you're still connected with the broader community of this whole development of this town, and you can still go into the city center and do all these things. And it's just, there's like communities within the communities, tribes within the community.
For sure. And if you have a bunch of 22-year-olds, like, okay, we want a volleyball court, we want a basketball court, we want like it's a different thing. Would there be, and this may be too far down the road thinking about this, but is there like a leadership structure? Like, is there going to be a mayor of this kind of situation?
Or, I mean, it's definitely not too far down the road, because like that's how these things are being created. It's just like what is possible, like how would we want it to be? And that's really what excites me about this particular project, and some of the other ones I'm working on is like that's the kind of thinking that's behind it all. And it's not like, well, how do we keep this in budget, or how do we what's the norm for Austin or Texas? It's like, no, what's our preferred way? Like what's the coolest thing we could imagine? And so when it comes to that aspect of it, like that's gonna be a key component. And to me, like at least in my mind, it feels like a council system where it's like, say each little cluster of homes has a representative, and that person goes to the larger representative meeting, and everyone has like a say. I mean, it's kind of the way the political system is supposedly structured, but it's like
but genuine.
But genuine, and it's like, and then it's like
you know everyone too.
Exactly.
So it's like if whoever your accounts person is within your group of homes, it's like if they aren't actually saying what we want, it's like we're gonna know because it's that close.
Right.
It's that like integrated with each other.
Definitely, yeah, and yeah. So there's a whole like leadership aspect of it. It's like, how do you govern something like this, and how do you choose representatives, and how do you arrive at decisions and that sort of thing. So it's an opportunity to create new ways of doing all of that.
Yeah.
Well, I fully believe in that, man.
I was gonna say I'm really excited about it. You know,
it's sort of like a blue ocean where it's like you're probably one of the first companies or conglomerates doing something like this. And so, like you said, you get to sort of choose everything.
Trailblazer.
For sure, yeah. It's like the most full spectrum thing that I'm aware of. Like, there's a lot of people who've had similar ideas, or maybe even working on similar projects, and there's probably some that we have no idea about that maybe already doing large pieces of this. And so that's the cool part. It's like once you start doing it, you start connecting, and someone's like, "Oh, it reminds me of this thing," and we can go over, talk to them, like, "Well, what are you guys doing? What's worked? What's not? What pieces are missing?" And learn from them, and get that full spectrum of like all the things that need to go into making a successful community. And again, it's just going to be the first one, and the idea is to just like figure it out and then refine it and do the next one, do a larger scale. I mean, like the ultimate idea is to create like a full-on city. It's just like buy enough land where we can incorporate a new city, and it'll be near some other major city, but let's build 10,000 homes and let's house 50,000 people. Let's see what happens.
Magic.
That's incredible, man.
Is there a time frame that you're under right now, or is it still too early for that?
I mean, it's really like this particular project that is the most fast moving. Yeah. It's just as soon as possible.
That's amazing, dude.
I mean, we're already looking at land.
I didn't know I get this excited about something this quickly, and I love it.
Yeah. Well, that's I mean, and that's why I love sharing about it, because everyone gets it. It's like this is an idea that this time has come, and like the world is ripe for it. People are ripe for it. Right. And so I'll put you guys on the wait list. But it's like, it's like you barely have to start talking about it, and everyone just like feels that like, yeah, this is good. Like this is different, and I want to be a part of it in some way.
Well, and even if you don't know how it's going to turn out fully, it's like we know what we're currently doing isn't working. Yeah. So at least trying something different. If you're on the skeptical side of it, it's like, well, what's the other option? Yeah. Like continue to do what we've been doing, and that's not working super well. So like, this sounds a million times better. Yeah, exactly.
So you in this, you've spoken a lot about energy, and like from us knowing you, I would consider you to be an energetic master. So I'm curious, when did your exploration of energies and everything surrounding it, when did that start? How did that start?
Birth.
In the womb.
Well, I was born.
I was born as a being of energy into a world of energy. But no, I was, and this relates to everything I've just shared. I was born into a spiritual community in rural Montana. So my parents were part of a spiritual organization called the Summit Lighthouse, and they owned thousands of acres in southern Montana, right on the edge of Yellowstone National Park, and beautiful land, like beautiful mountains and forests, and there's river valley and grazing land, cropland, and all these things. And this community, there were about 500 to 1,000 people while I lived there, living on the community or in the surrounding area. And the spiritual movement had thousands, tens of thousands of people, members and followers around the world. So it's a pretty large organization, and that's where I was born. And they were part of it. They worked for the community there, and so I grew up within this pretty isolated spiritual community. And the beliefs of the community were similar to theosophy. Have you guys heard of that?
I've not.
It's a spiritual movement, and began, I mean, they would say like eons ago, but picked up steam like in the late 1800s, early 1900s, And it's, at its core, it's the idea that we're all God. And so what they do is they look at all the world's religions and spiritual movements, and they try to identify what is like the core common truth. And that core common truth is that we are all an individualized aspect of the I am. So the presence behind everything. Like you are a focus point of awareness, and you are an I am. And as that, we are the thing that is everything. And then from there, there's a lot of different belief systems that come in, because they would pull from the belief systems of the entire world, really. So I grew up learning about Hinduism and Buddhism and Christianity and Islam and really everything. And so we would learn about all these, they would call them the masters, these spiritual masters. So Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, and all the saints. And the idea was to embody your version of that, like obtain spiritual mastery. And there's a lot of other stuff involved in there. The leaders were channeling ascended masters. So it was a husband and wife. When I was born, the husband had passed away, so it was just the wife was leading the community, and she would channel. She would like go into a trance and channel ascended masters. So she would channel Jesus or Mother Mary or Saint Germain, all these different spiritual masters, and bring forth messages about world events and what was going on.
Wow.
So energy and the idea of like being of consciousness and being a individualized point of consciousness in an energetic world was there from the beginning.
Literally from
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense now, like that I know who you are and that's where you grew up. That makes so much sense.
I've had decades of practice.
So much
Yeah.
sense.
It's my operating system.
Yeah.
Which is a great operating system to have.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's flaws in it for sure, but like
Definitely. Yeah, I'm very grateful that I grew up that way and was exposed to these sorts of understandings early. And there are a lot of things that I experienced that were challenging to overcome. Like it was a very, in addition to all the great stuff, there were some very like cult-like aspects of it.
I was gonna ask if there was any of that in that.
Yeah, so like some of the, I guess like the shadowy aspects of it were that from a lot of people's perspective, especially on the outside looking in, it was very cult-like. And it seemingly a lot of people were under mind control, where they had outsourced their power and their thinking to the leaders, and beyond the leader, like the ascended masters who they were channeling. And so there was an interesting contrast of, hey, you're God and you can create anything, and you have infinite potential, and also you need to listen to us and do what we say, and that's what's most important. So it was a kind of a lot of contrasting things going on there.
Was there any point in your upbringing and then as you became an adult where you like questioned or kind of rebelled against how you were raised, or were you always like, no, this is like maybe tweak a little bit, but was there any point where you were like, nah, I'm not saying this?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, so we lived there until I was 12.
Okay.
And we were pretty isolated in the sense that they were very conscious of kind of maintaining this understanding of what you should allow into your consciousness and what shouldn't be allowed. And so for that reason, we didn't really watch TV. We didn't listen to the radio. We didn't, or at least we didn't tune into what would be considered pop culture. Like there was an understanding that those sorts of things were, as in their words, like of a lower consciousness level. And if you tune into that stuff, you'll be pulled into that world because it fills your consciousness, especially as a child. So they were very protective of the children, which obviously is important. Understanding that, I'm sure you guys have heard it, it's like when you're a child for the first 7 years of your life, you're basically just like hypnotized and you're just downloading everything you see.
Supercomputer.
Yeah, so they were,
It's like this, boom, this is how this goes.
so they were very protective of children. They set up a Montessori schooling system. My mom's a Montessori teacher, so they had amazing schools, and they were very health focused.